Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another ITY video. Today I'm with Steve Collins. He's the Chief Technology Officer of NetComm Wireless. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex.
So I thought I'd start at the beginning, and I know NetComm's been around for 34 years, and I remember the dial-up modems, and but today, we're all about broadband and machine-to-machine and wireless devices, and in fact, NetComm has gone global. It's a global Australian success story. But can you tell us a little bit about NetComm in 2016, and also when you started at NetComm, and a little bit about your history in the world of tech?
Okay, sure. Well, there's a bit to unpack there. So you look at 35 years ago for NetComm doing dial-up modems, it really was a household name for Australia and New Zealand. Doing our own manufacturing here in Sydney and selling products all around Australia and New Zealand. It went very big very quickly.
And that's before the internet. That was in the bulletin board days.
That's right. Yeah. Slow internet.
Yeah.
So in those days, lots of modems got sold, and NetComm became quite a household name selling those products. And things changed after that when things went to ADSL. A lot of products came out of Asia and came into the country. So NetComm got a bit smaller, but still remained at that bleeding edge of technology. Serial modem, those dial-up modems dried up, went into ADSL modems, Wi-Fi. And that's how we were from sort of 95 through to 2005.
Sure.
And around about that time, the CEO and the board of directors here at NetComm decided that it was time to get into an innovative new area, and they made the decision that wireless was a really good place to play.
Yeah.
And they bought some companies, made some acquisitions, and got into 3G public telco wireless.
As it was at the time.
As it was at the time, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, and I came on board in around about 2008, and I'd actually been doing wireless communications for quite a number of years.
Hence, you were of great interest to NetComm.
Well, I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
But,
Well, you're still here
Well,
8 years later. So.
I was really coming from that vehicle tracking M2M telematics space. That's
Sure.
what I'd done for more than 10 years.
Yeah, and that was a form of mobile all in itself.
Yeah, it's true. So, I mean, that technology became the pin-up child of M2M for very many years. If you look at Telstra and Optus, that's what they thought of when they thought M2M. They thought vehicle reliable communications.
Yeah.
NetComm got into using that wireless comms for doing things other than telematics. It was more about bringing broadband internet to your house, Wi-Fi and voice services into a home where you can't traditionally get cables in, where there's no copper or no traditional cable comms coming in. And that kind of difficult connection, or that connectivity space which is outside the ordinary, really is an area that we're playing today. That's a constant theme through a lot of what we do today.
Sure, wireless has only grown bigger and more important as time has gone by, and for many people in 2016 a wireless connection can be vastly faster than their wired connection.
They can be, and wireless, just because of improvements in technology and also because of the saturation of networks, it's much more useful. Interesting to note though, a lot of people do think that wireless is the saviour or the big thing that's going to come in and give internet to everyone. Well, there is a limitation in terms of physics of just how much spectrum there is around.
Sure.
You can't do one thing to solve all problems. And so what a lot of telcos are realising now is that to solve broadband connectivity problems, you need a combination of technologies.
Yeah.
And NetComm is really playing in that space which is outside the vanilla connectivity. You're going to get a large percentage of the population being connected using one thing. Those things are very competitive, lots of people trying to win that market, and the cost gets driven right down. And you've got big manufacturers coming from overseas doing that one thing for the whole world.
Sure.
Well,
and it gets commoditized.
It gets commoditized. Yeah. That's exactly what we don't want to do.
Yeah. Well, you want to go down the path less traveled because theoretically the rewards are greater there. I mean, that's the cliche.
That's right. And if you look at what NetComm's doing right now, it's listening to what our customers are wanting to solve, the problems they've got, and innovating new solutions to go and try and fix those problems. So there's a lot of connectivity that people want, and NBN's a great use case here in Australia where they've got a lot of different technologies that they're rolling out, and a good percentage of their market is using a thing they call fixed wireless, which they awarded a contract to Ericsson. And Ericsson used NetComm for the devices to connect up those fixed wireless devices.
Sure.
And that product never existed in the world before that got created. It was a unique set of problems, a unique set of technologies, and we went in there and designed a solution with Ericsson to solve that problem. It's gone very, very well.
And is that, out of curiosity, is that technology slated for use anywhere else in the world now that it exists?
Well, it's already actually, we've announced a big contract last year with a major telco in the US, and they're doing almost the same thing. And it's not exactly the same product, but it's based on the same core building blocks that we've done before. and we're doing that product for a rural broadband rollout there in the US. Same technology base, but just done a different way.
Sure. Oh, I've got different frequencies and different
Yep.
standards, but also, I mean, I've written a number of stories about NetComm over the past, several months, if not obviously, years and years. But
Right.
you've had a lot of announcements out of the US recently, which is, fantastic to see. What are a couple of the other things that you've recently released beyond this rural?
Beyond that one. Okay, so I mean, if you look at that rural broadband product, that's kind of on its own. Next to that, we have what we call M2M or
Machine to machine.
Machine to machine. A lot of people call IoT Internet of Things. We see machine to machine as a subset of that IoT market.
Well, it's that industrial Internet of Things.
Right, it's like the reliable Internet of Things, if you like, ultra reliable. Well, we've been doing M2M for very many years, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And if you include the acquisition that we made back in 2008, probably more like 15 years. So we've got a big, rich history of source, software code, and hardware platforms that we build on. And we tend to do a lot of products that we sell via telecommunication operator channels. So we had an announcement that we did for a Verizon approved device, actually at a relatively unique price point given the reliability of the product, lots of connectivity on board. And so that got announced in the US. We've had a number of products that we've done through Vodafone globally, not just Vodafone Australia, but through the head office.
Globally.
So we work through the head office in Dusseldorf, and we have products. We have two 3G products, and we just recently announced a 4G LTE product in this machine-to-machine wireless connectivity space. So that's now being distributed out worldwide. We have high hopes for that over the coming couple of years.
And it's good when it's a telco, product that they are ordering from you, presumably, because it's a nice big order. In theory.
Well, that's what you hope for, and that's actually true. In this case, we've got products that have the telco brand on board, and we're not particularly fussed about that. If we have the telco brand and not the NetComm brand, that's just fine for us. We'd just rather concentrate on making the gear and selling it rather than.
I mean, you're not a struggling OEM that's desperately trying to get your name out there.
No.
NetComm's already there. And look, it probably helps to get more sales when it says Verizon or Vodafone to their customers.
You've got to be realistic. At the end of the day, the people that are buying the product, what they're worried about is this thing going to work on the network correctly?
Yeah.
That's number one concern. And actually getting that to happen isn't easy. And that's what we specialise in, working with those telco partners to make a product that's reliable and interrupts with the network very well. So having the brand on the product there, it's great from our perspective here.
Sure. And with the NBN fixed wireless project, does the technology say NBN or Ericsson or NetComm or all three?
It says NBN.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Very nice. So you also just announced today that you launched a brand new R&D facility in the US. And I know you've had some expansion in Australia as well. We'll get to that. But tell us about the new facility in the US, where you set it up, and how difficult it was to find the sort of highly skilled staff that you would need to really make this R&D lab successful and next generation producing.
Sure. Okay. So I mean, in terms of how hard it is to find these staff, I kind of sighed a bit because it's really hard.
Yeah.
The sort of engineering we're doing at NetComm is non-standard.
I mean, this is true knowledge nation stuff. This is the stuff when they say we want to have a knowledge economy. We're not talking about people who are filling Excel spreadsheets.
No.
We're talking about people who are developing the next generation of technologies.
I mean, you look at the sort of products we're making, they haven't been made before in that format.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're taking a reference design for a smartphone and you're putting it in a yellow cover with a camera on it and you're churning that out.
Yeah,
you can do that with bodies.
That's not innovation.
Well, yeah. Okay, so it's not to a certain extent, in our perspective, it's not.
Yeah.
And we're taking the same building blocks that go into a smartphone and making something completely different.
You're actually innovating.
Yep.
That's what you're doing.
So
how hard was it to find those people?
So
How many people are there?
It was really hard. So we at NetComm are looking to hire in the order of 60 to 70 engineers at the moment.
And that's in Australia and the US?
That's worldwide.
Worldwide, yeah.
And that's tough. We've been hiring in Australia for about 3 years constantly. And we're finding good engineers, and they're here, they're loyal, they work really well, and we get great results out of an innovative team. But it's hard to grow that team here in Australia. Unfortunately, there is a real lack of ecosystem here of equivalent sort of companies where we can draw on engineers. So we set our sights to go elsewhere. Where else could we find those engineers? And we're not looking for just number of bodies.
Sure.
We're looking for a certain skill level, a certain tier of engineers.
Yeah.
And in our opinion, that came from really those countries or those areas where they've been doing it for many, many years.
Decades, yeah.
And so we went to a number of different places around the world. We interviewed lots of people, and we found an area in Sunrise, which is in Florida, in the US, where there was a big ecosystem of wireless engineers.
And what was obviously there's a lot of wireless stuff happening there, but what's some examples of the companies that were in that area in Sunrise?
Well, I guess the big one 10 years ago was Motorola,
Yeah.
And they were responsible for a lot of the old two-way paging systems that were done.
Very popular in the States.
Yeah, and they were innovated right there. And there were a couple of companies that spawned out of that that are still there in place. But there is a big ecosystem of RF, wireless, software, chipset level engineers that have been doing that sort of product for many years. And it's interesting, we went over there and we set up a job fair. We just put an ad out saying NetComm are going to be here.
Come and see us.
A lot of them didn't even know who NetComm was, but
yeah.
they looked around and went, hey, this is little company's doing some cool stuff. So we had one day where almost 70 people turned up for interviews, and frankly, we were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And if we had that many people of that caliber turning up here for our job fair interviews, we wouldn't be looking overseas.
Sure.
But they're there, they're hungry for work, and the skill levels were very, very good. So after we saw that, we did a whole lot of interviews, we formed a core team, and we've just announced today that we've put on 30 engineers, and we've opened a new facility there. The facility can probably handle 80, 90 engineers. When we
So there's room for growth. Yeah.
There's room for growth. We're not trying to break it by putting 90 people on from day one.
Yeah.
So we're starting with 30. That's enough to do 2 parallel development streams. And that will augment our target of hitting the 70 engineers, and the rest will probably come in Sydney and Melbourne.
Sure. And without giving any secrets away about what you're working on, what are the sort of things that they're doing research and development on,
Right.
besides obviously wireless stuff?
So we have a lot of different areas in NetComm where we're doing the development. Obviously, that team in Sunrise is very focused on wireless. So a lot of the engineers we've got from there are used to working in a very small, condensed type of product. So if you look at things like smartphones, they cram a lot of tech into a very small package, and there's some interesting engineering that goes with that. You've got high density component placement, you've got thermal mitigation techniques, power supply management, and antenna techniques for this small, dense environment. If you look at machine to machine as a product sector, they tend to be these big metal bricks with antennas on them. They look like you can hit someone over the head with it, and that's kind of the idea. Well, one of the things that NetComm is looking at doing is innovating that area a little bit to say, how can we take some of the high density technologies
and miniaturize
it, but still keep the reliability and the robustness of machine to machine.
Yeah.
So we're bought in, if you like, this new talent, which has been doing high dense engineering for a long time, but moving it into this machine to machine reliability space. And so that's the sort of area that team is going to be focused on.
Sure. And it must have been, I guess, fun to find all these people, and you can now go.
Yeah. Well, it's also, as well as finding the talent, you need to have someone that's a good cultural fit as well. And you go to some areas and you go, these people are good, but they just don't work the NetComm way.
Sure.
So with the Sunrise team, we found a group of engineers that actually gelled really well with our team. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's exciting times.
Sure. So you've also expanded your head office in Australia. You used to be on 1 floor, now you're on 3 floors. Tell us about that expansion, because that's also a fabulous thing to see.
So we're in a building here in Lane Cove in Sydney. We have for about 6 years been in this building on 1 floor, and when I came in, it was a quarter of the floor, and then we put people on and we became half the floor, and then everyone else got squished into the corner, and so now we're on 2 floors. We have the whole engineering team is on one of the floors, and that floor is frankly full, and the other floor is sales, marketing, admin, accounts, all those things.
So there's a 3rd floor.
And now we're just opening a 3rd floor. We are literally in build-out phase at the moment, and we're making a big investment in equipment, engineering equipment. So we went to the market a number of months ago and raised some capital for the company, and that capital has been used expressly to put on engineering and buy equipment for us to do innovative new things. So we're buying a lot of radio frequency testing equipment to do innovative wireless solutions. And we're buying a lot of equipment that allows us to do some more innovative products in challenging environments. So we're doing a lot of outdoor equipment, UV exposure, lightning exposure, rain, those sorts of things.
Made for Australia, right? That's what it sounds like.
It will be made for Australia. That's a lot of our key customers are there.
I'm sure there's a lot of rugged environments in the US and all over the world, really.
Yeah, and you go to different environments. Like we're doing this big contract in the US, and while they are concerned about the hot end, a lot more concerns about the low temperature end, because they have areas that go a lot colder in the US than they do here in Australia.
So there's snowstorms that we just laugh at unless you go skiing, you just don't see it.
Yeah. So there's things we have to do and set up test environments for. And unfortunately, if you look at the device development ecosystem here in Sydney, not a lot of external test houses that have the gear that we require. And
that's why you need to build it yourself and make sure
we're just having to do it ourselves. Really don't have an alternative.
And of course, as you're building yourself, it ends up being state of the art, able to test for the very latest situations and frequencies and everything else.
I mean, a lot of people would look at us and say we're doing bleeding edge things that have never been done before. Often we don't have time to take a step back and think about that. We have a job to do, we have a problem to solve, and we're just solving it. And because we're doing so much of the engineering in-house, we have to have the tools in-house to do those tests and innovate that in-house. And there's a lot of time pressures about getting these products to market.
Sure.
A lot of our customers are these telcos, and they need a product February next year, and that's an immovable date. So having the equipment in-house allows us to, in a more agile fashion, do our development and spin that technology quicker, rather than having to gate through external test houses and the like. So being the master of our own destiny, if you like, really helps us.
Very important. I mean, you've got to own your own. Yeah, but I suppose the only thing you may not necessarily own is your own manufacturing facility. I suppose
we don't own
through the close relationships with big factories in China or.
So we've worked for a very long time doing large scale manufacturing. If you go back to your first question, Alex, about what we did initially, we had our own factory here in Sydney. We know how to do manufacturing on scale, but one thing we don't do at NetComm is reinvent the wheel. If someone else is doing it and doing a good job of it, we'll use that tool. There's no point inventing things for the sake of it. So there are factories all over the world that know how to do manufacturing at scale. Let's use them. There's just no point.
And you've also, in amongst getting new R&D facilities and new floors here, you've got a new website and a new corporate mantra and vision. So tell us a little bit about those. Yeah,
so NetComm, if you looked at NetComm website over the years, it's been very product-centric. We've developed products, we've promoted and sold those products, but if you log onto our website, it's been, here's the catalogue, here's the categories, knock yourself out. And we had a look at that over the last 18 months and said, well, where is NetComm having our success? We're having a lot of success doing projects that no one in Australia or even the world knows we're doing. We're doing very integrated, high technology projects, but the average consumer wouldn't go and buy them, so they haven't turned up on our website. So we're not doing ourselves any favours by that. So we took a step back and said, well, what actually are we doing?
I mean, your products are still available in the major computer superstores, so that's still there.
Do that.
Yeah,
but our big wins and our growth strategy is not in that space, to be frank. It's in a area that, if you look at our website, the first page says, listen, innovate, solve.
And that's also your new corporate slogan.
That's our slogan. So that's what we do. We go and we listen to some of these big customers. We listen to what their requirements are. We listen to what their challenges are. And they have these things, we call them pain points, but they have these areas that they can't solve because their systems or their technologies don't work. We can look at that and go, okay, we can innovate a way around that. We can innovate you something unique that will fix your problem. And when you have it, your problems will be solved.
I mean, because it's a pain point, it's really an opportunity to remove the pain.
But it does require us as a vendor or as a device designer to say, okay, we're not going to make the standard thing because the standard thing's already out there. We have to go listen, innovate what a solution is, and then solve that. And we're doing it sometimes with those customers' brands on board, and that's okay. But it does mean that in terms of promoting the NetComm brand, it's not about anymore the product catalog. It's not about the lineup of 7 products with these features. It's now about what building blocks, what technologies does NetComm bring to the party, what expertise do we have, and how can we put that to good use with our customers. So that new website got launched a number of weeks ago. And it does present NetComm in quite a different light. And if you look at the original comments we made about NetComm 30 years ago and the serial modems, the company is pretty much unrecognisable from when it was that 30 years ago. And if you look at what our CEO has done and received the award for this year from ACOMS,
as the communications ambassador.
Communications ambassador. So he's moved the company from this serial modem to ADSL to 3G to wireless into this listen, innovate, solve. It's riding the technology wave and being ahead of the curve where the competition are and the average product manufacturers
are. It's that famous saying, skating to where the puck will be, not where it has been.
That's what we try to do. And we're really trying to focus ourselves. If you look at Internet of Things and M2M and all these wireless technologies. We're trying to look at, okay, how do we make sure we're not doing products that everyone else is bothering to do?
Yeah.
Let's look at those things that are a bit more challenging. Let's look at those things that people are avoiding because they're hard. If we can solve those problems, then we have something unique to offer our customers.
And it must also be delivering a great IP library and great collection of patents which could sustain the company as well.
All we do is innovate new technology building blocks. That's all we do. And as an engineer, which I am and a lot of the company are, it's like heaven on a stick.
Well, it's very fulfilling. It's your dream come true. Yeah. You're achieving what you set out to do. So look, with all of this, edge of the cutting edge technology that you're working on all these projects, how do you think things will look like in a decade? I mean, many of the things we take for granted that you're innovating will be taking for granted, and they'll become invisible. They'll be so successful. So, what sort of product problems do you think you'll be working on then, or what milestones do you think will be achieved over that time?
I'd love to know what we're doing in 10 years' time. That's actually kind of my job to work that out.
Yeah.
It's not easy,
No.
and when you think of it straight, it changes, and technology waves are getting closer and closer together. And we've been riding 3G through to 4G, and there's a lot of hype about 5G at the moment.
Are you doing any work in that regard?
We're doing some science work on 5G at the moment.
I mean, everyone seems to be working very hard on that.
It's one of those things where the standardization effort is still more than a year away.
Yeah, it's still ongoing. Yeah.
There's a lot of people promoting their 5G technology.
Yes,
it's 5G-like technology. It's a speed category.
It's 4.5G or 4.75G. It's not really 5G.
It's not yet. It's not genuine 5G. We are definitely doing some work. We aren't going to be inventing network RAN equipment or anything like that. There's bigger players there doing that. However, in the device market, especially in the fixed wireless area where you've got these outdoor devices, 5G at the frequencies it's at, which is a very high frequency, millimeter wave frequencies, they won't propagate very well. They're going to do a few hundred meters and maybe that's it. So having a device that's outside, away from obstructions into the building, up high, is only going to make 5G technologies work better. So that's where we're focusing our efforts around the device topology and the antennas and that placement of device.
Maybe boosting technologies and all that sort of thing.
Well, that's the kind of thing we're working on without giving too much away. So that's an area that we're definitely focusing on. If you look at M2M, my view on that is that there's a lot of analysts and a lot of companies getting very excited about IoT, of which M2M is a subset. And they're right, it's going to get interesting, but it's only going to get more complicated before it becomes apparent that not everyone can succeed at this game. We've been doing it for a very long time. What I predict is that there will be a huge fragmentation of different devices, different niche solutions. M2M for NetComm will mean picking some verticals or some niches and specialising in those. No one, including the big guys, no one's going to be a one-stop shop for M2M or IoT worldwide. It's going to be lots and lots of fragmented technologies.
Until some inevitable future consolidation occurs, as it always theoretically does.
Even then, the use case for providing internet connectivity to your washing machine is very different to a use case of providing internet technology to a vending machine or a digital sign or a plane. These are things that would like to be on the internet, but their use case for products and technology is very, very different. And a lot of people are kind of missing the subtleties of that, because what it means is different technologies and different platforms will be used for those different niche markets. So that's going to happen, and NetComm will pick some of those strategically, and we will have products for those markets, but we won't try and be one-stop shop.
I mean, with the digital signs, I've got a friend that owns a couple of them, and he's going onto a website, changing the messages, hitting the button. It's all already on the internet already. It's simple. And you see companies like LG talking about you can text your washing machine to say, hey, put it on pause until 5 o'clock and then wash it then, so by the time I'm home at 6, it's ready to go into the dryer.
Right.
But you sort of don't see a lot of these things still yet being available for the end user, and you're not really playing in that space, you're playing in the industrial space.
Well, we are. We're playing in that ultra-reliable, high-reliability connectivity space, and we call that M2M. It's still Internet of Things, frankly, but it's done a different way.
So I always like to ask this question as we get towards the end of the interview, and that's just to sort of shift gears a bit and just ask if you could please share the best advice that you've ever received to help you get where you are today, from some mentor, parents, teachers, etc.
Very good question. So I think my advice would be don't stuff up. Now that might sound short and sweet, but if you think into that, it's more about
proper planning.
Thinking through your strategy and making a decision so that in the future you don't look back and go, you know what, I didn't do that right. So I'm quite a big believer in actually making a decision based on the information you have to hand. Making a decision is better than not making a decision and waiting.
Paralysis, yeah.
So as long as you get as much information that's accurate to hand, you can make an informed decision and hopefully don't stuff up.
Yeah. Very good. And so do you have any final messages for ITWire viewers and readers and for your current and future customers, whether they're consumers or these large giant telcos?
Sure, okay. I guess my final message would be that if you think you know NetComm, you might want to think again. We have gone through a lot of technology refreshes and a lot of changes in the company. We are on a serious upward curve at the moment, doing some really exciting engineering work. I would like to say that any good engineers who like the idea of making products, they like the idea of actually creating and innovating a thing that you hold and we manufacture. Not a lot of that left in Australia. We love to get our hands on those engineers that like to innovate and create actual tangible products.
Sure.
So if that's something that appeals to you, then would like to hear from you. We're still recruiting. We've still got more than 30 engineering positions open in Sydney and Melbourne. So give us a shout. But in terms of NetComm and where we're going, we're now a worldwide company doing a lot of really innovative products. And so I would suggest you have a look at our new website and get yourself a little bit educated on what's possible.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you didn't just talk to future, current and future customers, but also to future employees.
Yeah.
It's very good. Well, Steve, thank you very much for taking the time to share with us the latest about NetComm in 2016. I hope to talk to you again in the future, and best of luck.
Great. Thanks, Alex. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.